sometimes even on a daily basis, you see speakers coming, and the worst thing is that it's coming from Jewish speakers, and then, you know, I find myself sometimes the only person who have to, you know, try and stand there and defend Israel and defend the US, and you hear all these horrible things. Now, I don't even know sometimes if they believe what they're saying, or they're saying it because it's trendy, but, you know, there is a book written by an international relations scholar called Myths of Empire, and he talks about how people create myths and then they start believing in it. And I think that right now in the American academia, I'm not even talking about the Europeans, you know, they created certain myths, maybe because of the Saudis, maybe because of other reasons, and now people start to believe in it. So how do you see the solution?
Well, there are two questions, and I'm not Hillel, and I can't answer them on one foot. Let me deal with the second one first, because I know a lot about the Saudis. And it's the kind of stuff that you really don't read about. It took 4 years of research to write that book. But let's take a recent example of academia. Harvard got $20 million. They just received it to build their Middle East Studies and Islamic Affairs Department in the 70s. Georgetown University did the same. No strings attached, they said. Yeah, Georgetown University, 3 months after they get the grant, has the Palestinian Solidarity Conference. And these aren't the only. The book goes into great detail about who is getting what money from where. And that money is also being used to turn these centers into educational training centers that teach elementary school teachers and high school teachers how to teach subjects on the Middle East, which are not in the book. I only refer to it briefly, but since then there's been a whole series of articles that have come out of teachers who are going to Harvard, to these particular centers that are now becoming really Islamic centers and mouthpieces for Wahhabism in America. And they're getting materials and they're going back to their classrooms. And it's pretty hard to deal with this issue of $800 billion that are flowing really into this country from Saudi Arabia. Everybody wants money, and that's why, you know, that's why you can take out this whole ad in U.S. News and World Report. It must have cost millions, you know, to do that. But what does it mean to them? The thing that bothers me about all of this is that 35 years ago, I remember Richard Nixon saying, we're going to diversify the economy and get America off oil. And if he had done that, the Arabs would be eating sand now, and they would have a product that nobody really cared about buying. And now American foreign policy and our institutions and the mosques and the Islamic libraries and everything else have given up any credibility whatsoever. We have literally sold our foreign policies to oil. And now we're paying the price. We have empowered our enemies. And we have the technology through all sorts of biomass and other things. We have the technology to change. But the lobbies are too powerful in this country, and the Saudis are very powerful, and that's why you only hear about the Israeli lobby. You never hear about the Saudi lobby. It's because they've got former ambassadors on the bankroll and everything. So my fear, and I go through this in the book in great detail, is that there's a silent war going on in this country that nobody really wants to talk about. And that is the infusion of Saudi Wahhabism, very nicely, very quietly, very discreetly, and yet forcibly, through Islamic mosques, and through Islamic libraries, and through Middle East Studies departments, the University of Arkansas, Harvard, the whole ton of them. Okay, they're just buying them up and sending in their people and all of their materials, and not a word is being said. When's the last time you read an article on what the Saudis are doing? You haven't. Because people are afraid to publish it. Now, on Iran, I can give you 1,000 reasons, double it, and then cube it, on why we shouldn't take out the nuclear reactors. But the truth is that we don't have a choice. And it's not only Israel's responsibility. It is the world's responsibility. You have al-Madini Jad, who believes that within the next 3 years, basically what the Christian evangelicals believe in the coming of the Messiah, Ahmadinejad believes in the coming of I think, the 12th Imam, who will come back to the earth in chaos and deliver everybody to Islam. And he sees his role as creating the environment to do that. This is a guy who is maybe 6 months to 9 months away from achieving nuclear capability. He's got his finger on a nuclear trigger, and he would be only too happy to share it, I am sure, with all of his terrorist affiliates throughout the world, starting with Hezbollah. So, should we take it out? Yes. Will there be consequences? Possibly. Several reasons for that. One, they control the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil passes every day. Two, you've got, a few years ago, the French, to pacify their own Muslim populations, took in tons of Iranian immigrants, not tons, but I guess 3,000 or 4,000 Iranian immigrants. And it gave them French passports, and they've now gone to Venezuela, Mexico, Canada, and the United States. In other words, we have fifth columns within this country, and we do not know how they will react if and when we take out those reactors. Will we take out the reactors? Yes. Can it be done? We have 378 sites throughout the country estimated according to intelligence. But you don't have to take them all out. You can take maybe 24 out. And if you take them out, then what? Well, I think that's why Mossad changed. Mossad, over the last 2 years, has evolved into more than just a spy team. Mossad has evolved into an A-team, a Delta Force. And I think that you're not only going to get the nuclear reactors taken out, but you're going to get a decapitation of the Iranian regime. And I'm sure that somewhere in Washington, a plan is already in place to institute a coup d'etat. And I think that will happen. I don't think that we have a choice, but there will be consequences. Israel has the Arrow 2 system, and it's all ready. They have tested every Iranian missile that they know to be in the Iranian system, and the Arrow 2 system has worked against it. America's building a secret base in Kirkuk that nobody knows about, at least I know about it, only because of Eugene's Weekly. And if I know about it, the Iranians know about it. So all these things are going on, and all of these factors lead me to conclude that the preemptive strike is imminent. And there will be consequences, and we don't have a clue what they are. But we have to do this, because this man is a madman. And with his finger on a nuclear trigger, it is Armageddon. You want to try that now?
I think you scared the hell out of us.
I didn't do anything. I'm just the messenger.
We want you.
Yeah.
You mentioned pretty early that the war on terror is really a clash between cultures. The one side, the culture of secular democracy, the other side, a sort of mystic tribalism adopted by the Muslim world. And academia, and in my experience, Gainesville is no exception, has adopted the sort of philosophy du jour of subjectivity advanced through kind of a moral and cultural relativism, meaning there is no proper way for a man to lead his life, and that it doesn't really, there's no moral distinction between recognizing the rights of citizenry or whether citizens are ruled by the point of a gun. Just how destructive do you think that philosophy is, and what do you think that we can do to advance the idea of the superiority of Western culture, meaning the ideas of reason, individualism, and capitalism, specifically on a college campus?
About 25 years? It might take that long. I'm not sure that I have an answer to the question, primarily because I'm not sure that I understand the question. But as you were speaking, something popped into my head that I want to explain. We are not at war with Islam. We are at war with an interpretation of Islam that we consider to be barbaric. And that's a very, very important distinction. It doesn't alter the fact that we are still at war. But not all Muslims are terrorists. But you have to understand that revolutions in history were caused by small groups of people. There was the Bolsheviks, for example, who were a very small group, and we had the Russian Revolution. It doesn't take a lot of people to conduct a revolution. So these people are dangerous, but the war isn't with Islam. But that's an aside. I'm not really, can you kind of clarify your question a little bit, and I'll try and answer it. I don't quite, are you saying there's a problem on campuses, how do we deal with it, or is there something more to it than that?
What I'm saying is that academics are teaching the ideas of moral and cultural relativism, meaning that there is no...
One man's terrorism is another man's freedom fighter.
Set of morality. Well, in all respects, not just in terrorism, but in the respect that all cultures are equal. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether individual rights are recognized or whether people are ruled fascist.
They're right. All cultures are equal. The problem is our enemies don't feel that way. The problem is our enemies say either you submit to Islam or we kill you. And that's a problem because we have a different culture. Or to put it another way, their culture is different from ours. It is a cultural clash. I think that there is a problem within a lot of the ivory tower halls of academia that look for simple solutions to complex problems. We're involved in a situation in which we as a civilization have never been involved since the Crusades. We are involved in what is evolving into a religious war. I believe that all cultures are equal. The Christians accept the Jews accept the Christians. The problem is the radical Islamists don't accept any other interpretation of Islam but their own. And until we acknowledge the fact that there is really no compromise, I think that our civilization is in trouble. And I don't care what academia says. Once they teach it, I think that it's time that they enter the real world. Because I think this is the real world.
You say that academics, let me see if I can visualize, academics have simple solutions to complex problems. Let me suggest it's the opposite. We're coming up with very complex solutions, slow culture change, to a very simple problem. It's a military problem. They want to wipe us out. That's no exaggeration. They happen not to have the technology. We have the technology to wipe them out, but we do not want to use it for a number of reasons. It is really, the solution, there has to be a military component to the solution, and the dilemma is we are not willing to do two things that it would appear would be useful in the war. We're not willing to do it. I'm not saying I'd be willing to do it. We are not willing to wipe out civilian populations. Number one. We are not willing to control the internal forces that debilitate our will by depicting only the other point of view. We're not willing to control the media. We're not willing to do that in this society, and I'm not saying we should. But given these principles, we can't fight the war. They are going to win because the day that they have the nuclear technology, they will use it. We have it, and we will not use it. So in reducing the problem to its central, it's really, when push comes to shove, where the rubber hits the road, it's a military problem now because they are trying to get the technology by which they will wipe us out. And I have no doubt that if they had nuclear weapons, they would use them. We have the nuclear weapons, and we will not use them. This is a problem. I'm not suggesting we use them as civilian part. I don't know what to do. But I don't believe in slow culture change. Re-educating the academics. I don't believe in that. Forget it. Basically, at West Point, they teach there are well-worked-out military strategies for fighting the wars of the last century. We have no military strategies for fighting this type of war. And I think the solution is going to have to be military, and it's going to have to be a type of military intervention that doesn't wipe out civilian populations. And no one knows how to do that. I think it's really a simple, the essence of the problem is quite clear and simple. And I don't have a simple solution.
As a rabbi, I'm very restricted always, especially here, to voice my opinion when it comes to political matters. Many times, Torah views what the world would view as a political matter as actually a life-saving matter as opposed to a political matter. I believe, and this is maybe coming from my emotional side, which I like what you said regarding the emotional view as opposed to not expressing that, or that wouldn't be as reputable as something else. I mentioned to my wife after 9/11 that I believe our children will be fighting this war, similar to what you said, unfortunately. I really believe that we don't want to fight the war like Professor Murray is suggesting, but there will come a time that in the near future, God willing, it'll be a limited number of casualties, but I believe we will have to wipe out civilian populations. And we sound very radical when we say that, and Americans, like you say, are too kind to even think that way. And Torah actually supports what you said, that there's a concept of a kingdom of kindness, and we believe that America is that kingdom of kindness, and that's why we don't know how to deal with such type of evil or hate, or however we want to portray it. I believe the time will come, and very soon, because of threats of Iran, Al-Qaeda, and the enemy that's so vast and spread out, that we will have to do what we've done in the past. Despite the consequences.
Wars are fought according to certain specific paradigms. That is, certain conduct is acceptable, and certain conduct is not acceptable. International law is pretty clear on that. The tragedy is that international law changes after every war. And what is not acceptable today may become acceptable if you kill 1 million Americans, or you contaminate New York City with a dirty bomb. Suddenly, the paradigm changes.
So we're going to wait for that?
Yes.
But then the reaction will be what we don't want to even think of.
Because what I am saying you will never hear from a politician. Why? Because he will never get elected. Why? Because there are people in this country who feel that 9/11 was just an accident, that it was an aberration, historical aberration.
It was a Republican conspiracy.
It was a Republican conspiracy. And if you look far enough, the Arabs are convinced that it was the Israelis who did it. Absolutely convinced.
And they really say that?
Yeah, they really say that. And so every war is based on certain paradigms. And the paradigm, as the rabbi said, as I have said, would not allow us to do what we did to end World War II. Yet.
Since you mentioned Richard Nixon, one of the phrases associated with him is to follow the money. It would seem, rather than having to take out a whole country, that it would have been far better had we invaded Saudi Arabia instead of Iraq. Because they seem to be the source of the money for all this. Are we prepared to do that? I mean, I think we'll invade someone else if there is another catastrophe. I agree. And it should be, it seems like it should have been Saudi Arabia.
The answer to the question, actually, in the last chapter of my book, deals with strategic considerations. How do we deal with the issue? And what I'm suggesting is that we need a contingency plan in this country. Al-Qaeda intends to conduct a military coup d'etat in Saudi Arabia. So far, the Saudis have been able to capture people, but the young are disenfranchised. There is no middle class in Saudi Arabia. All this opulence is going to the extremely wealthy. You drive out of Riyadh into the country, it's absolute poverty, cesspools. Okay? The bottom line is that the way it will unfold, I think, is if there is an Al-Qaeda coup d'etat in Saudi Arabia, America